A jury has found Google guilty of violating antitrust laws for operating a monopoly with its App Store. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze explains what happens next.
This is a case that could impact the price you pay when you download apps on your phone. A federal jury late Monday found Google guilty of having an illegal monopoly on its Android app store. This is the first major loss for Google as the tech giant faces several legal challenges over its dominance on the internet. Now, this case was brought by Epic Games, the creator of the popular video game Fortnite. Epic accused Google of maintaining a monopoly on its app store by charging companies fees when users make purchases from a game like Fortnite. Epic CEO writing victory over Google and free Fortnite, with the company calling this decision a win for consumers. But Google is vowing to appeal, saying the trial made clear that we compete fiercely with Apple and its App Store, as well as app stores on Android devices and gaming consoles. Ultimately, if Google is forced to change its business model here, it could mean that people who use those devices find more apps there at lower prices. Elizabeth Schulze, ABC News, Washington.
1 month after a judge declared Google's search engine a monopoly, the tech giant is facing another antitrust lawsuit over its advertising technology. The National Desk, Jeff Harris, joins us. Jeff, the Justice Department and Google just made opening statements to a federal judge earlier today. What specifically are the claims regarding advertising?
So the DOJ is alleging, Didi, that Google created another monopoly, but this time on digital advertising by obtaining all of the tools to buy, sell, and display ads. They also claim Google controls the ad exchange market as well. Rebecca Hall-Allensworth, an antitrust professor at Vanderbilt Law School, tells us Google is being accused of monopolizing the ad tech market, including the technology that matches online publishers to advertisers.
Somebody who has a space on a website wants to sell it to an advertiser, and how an advertiser who has an advertisement they want to go on a website, how they would connect and transact.
Hall-Allensworth says by controlling all of the technology, the government is claiming Google makes a good bit of money when it arranges sales between publishers and advertisers.
Google's accused of taking 30 cents out of every dollar in this market. That's an awful lot of waste, if indeed it's waste, and that's what the government says.
Madeline Somerville, an attorney at Georgia Trial Consulting, tells us Google is making the argument that the government's perspective on what qualifies as acceptable practices in the ad marketplace is outdated.
It's perfectly acceptable what they're doing because this is how the ad marketplace works, and that essentially the DOJ hasn't caught up to the new internet industry that we're in when it comes to advertising and marketing.
But she says if the tech giant is found guilty, there is a chance the company could be broken up.
I think it would still be able to function. It would just be sort of an overhaul.
Now, this past December, Google agreed to pay $700 million to settle a separate antitrust lawsuit, which claimed the company forced app makers to use its payment system on its Play Store marketplace. Reporting for the National Desk, I'm Jeff Harris.
What's up out there, YouTube? This is James coming back at you with another informative video. I hope all is well with you guys out there on this beautiful Monday. All is good here. Well, as we can see, Google is dealing with some serious adversity. You know, $700 million here, $25 million there, $650 million anywhere else. You know what I mean? That's just going out. From what I understand, Google is only worth $1/2 trillion, which that is a tremendous amount of money, but it's just not enough money for a platform, you know, like Google, YouTube, especially when you have, you know, single entities like men that has 2 or 3 times that much. I can see that basically Google is going down. The ship of Google is going down, and it's thanks to basically biases, prejudice, you know, and all kinds of other little hidden foul tactics that they do. You know, hey, you get back what you put out, and that's basically what this all boils down to. The situation with the antitrust laws that they were found guilty of violating has basically crippled them. It was somewhat like a Achilles heel, okay? And I don't know if you guys are aware of this, they have this child addiction thing, what they were ruled against as well, that they had to pay out humongous amounts of money. And yet you wonder why they're cutting back on content creators, paying money, coming up with all kinds of excuses. Just continue to move the goalpost. You see what I'm saying? Going from 4,000 hours of watch time, to 8,000 and all that old kind of stuff. Making sure you just really don't. There's no growth on YouTube at all, just because of this. See, all of their money is going to paying out lawsuits, okay? And they say, well, we do not, basically, how is it? We don't, admit any guilt. We didn't do anything wrong and we will appeal. That's costing them humongous amounts of money. And it ain't going to be long before Google goes under. And there's a good chance that somebody else might be running YouTube. And that might be a good thing. That could be a good thing because maybe YouTube can become great again. You see? But these underwater missiles, you see what I mean? Antitrust, child addiction. There's so many more. I just never put, those in this little thumbnail right here. You see what I'm saying? There's no wonder, like I said, comments disappear because they really can't afford for you to make comments. They only have so many channels that they favor, and they are actually coming against them too for some kind of bogus, excuses. Bogus excuses. You see what I mean? And they are taking these channels down. They're just coming out of nowhere, out of the blue. Who was it? Stock Market Steve. He was just on here just the other day. I think it was Saturday where I saw the video where they basically hit his channel, copyright strikes. Three of them right one after another. And he said he used their copyright tool. You see what I'm saying? They give him the thumbs up, the green light to go, rather this thing, if it's, copyrighted or not. You see what I'm saying? But yet still come back, you know what I'm saying? Well, we're going to take this channel down. See, they did this when they took over YouTube in the first place. It was so many booming channels, booming channels. Then all of a sudden, they were took down. These guys came back. And they never recovered, a lot of them, they never recovered, the views, the viewership, the subscribers. They were crippled. You see, you can have 95 to 100,000 subscribers and probably you might make 300 to 400 views. You know what I'm saying? People like me has been on here 7 or 8 years, no growth at all, going backward. Going backward is not because of my fault. It's not because of something I'm doing wrong. It's just that they don't want this channel to get off of the ground, so they keep it down. In some cases, I think when I first started, I was doing better than I am doing now. So this is what it all boils down to. YouTube is going to become a thing of the past eventually. I guarantee you that. You see, and it's all because of the biases, the prejudice, all those kind of things right there, where they don't want you to succeed. Now, I have a couple clips. They finna be hit. Now, they already was hit by this child addiction thing. Now, which I look at that as a bogus lawsuit all the way around, because it's up to a parent to govern the time that their children, 6 years old, spend on social media. Come on. You know what I'm saying? But being that Google does the wrong and foul things that they do, hey, you do ugly coming back to you. And not to mention, we're finna watch this clip about the situation that took place probably about 2 to 4 years ago back in Buffalo, New York, at Tom's, I think it's Tops, yeah, groceries there, where you had probably 8 to 9 brothers and sisters lose their life on a Saturday because a radicalized racist came in there with an assault gun, and basically just opened fire on them. You see, now there are lawyers that's pushing to sue Google for this, for radicalizing. You see, these people, because they figure, okay, now if a 6-year-old can sue Google for, I don't know, 3, 4, 500, well, $5 million, excuse me. You know what I mean? And win, because, well, you got my child addicted to watching social media. They looking at this more seriously, where lies were actually taught by some racist that was radicalized on, Google platforms like YouTube. So without further ado, let's check this out.
This message is one that's important to Kaylee and her family, but it's a very great importance to a generation of people who have been affected.
This message is one that is important to Kaylee and her family, but especially for others. That's what we just heard there. This is really important because this is the response. The lawyer for a plaintiff known as Kaylee, who sued and won a landmark social media addiction case. Kaylee says Google's YouTube and Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, intentionally got her hooked on their platforms, injured her mental health, and failed to warn her about the risk. On Tuesday, in a separate case in New Mexico, Meta was found guilty of failing to protect children from sexual exploitation online. Meta and Google both disagreed with the rulings and plan to appeal, but this could change the platforms and create more guardrails for kids. So here to break down the impact of these court decisions is Dr. Jada Jackson, a licensed mental health counselor and CEO of Think Well Plus Counseling and Wellness. Dr. Jackson, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
We want to get right into it. These rulings are really, really important and could have big impacts. So the first question I have for you, can you talk to us about the shift, like when we see these rulings from social media being, a lifestyle choice to kind of a legitimate mental health risk?
Yes, we're no longer just talking about entertainment here. We're talking about exposure. And so social media has officially entered that category of a mental health risk factor, especially for children who have developing brains. And so just because it's normalized doesn't necessarily mean that it's neutral.
And you just mentioned, the impact on the brain. I want to get into that a little bit more. Can you talk about how specifically social media use impacts the brain, especially for kids and teens, and what is really happening neurologically when that social media use becomes excessive?
The biggest issue is the dopamine overloads, because social media floods the brain with dopamine, that feel-good chemical. And that's the problem. It means that the brain starts craving those really quick hits of pleasure, making it difficult to engage in real life. And then the second thing that happens is it rewires our attention and our focus. So it trains the brain for short bursts of stimulation. So now kids and teens, they struggle to focus and sit still and tolerate boredom, unfortunately. And finally, it heightens the emotional sensitivity. And that's where the brain becomes more reactive, more comparison, more rejection, sensitivity, and unfortunately, more anxiety.
There were so many things that came up in these cases, and one of them was this idea of the addictive design of these platforms. Can you talk about that from a psychological perspective and what it looks like and why it is so difficult for folks to disconnect?
Yeah, the platforms are built on what we call intermittent reinforcement. So you don't know when the reward is coming. So you keep checking, you keep searching, you keep seeking. And it's the same psychological mechanisms that are used in slot machines. And so that's why people don't just use social media. They get sucked into it. They get pulled into it.
What are some of the key warnings that social media use is having a negative impact, particularly, this question being for parents, for your kids and teens?
Mood changes. You want to look for increased anxiety, irritability, and sadness. Escapism. If they are using social media to avoid real life instead of engaging in real life. And then just disconnection. They're less present with family, friends, and what I believe, from a psychological perspective, they're also less engaged with themselves. So they're disconnected from self. And then there's the identity confusion. They don't know who they are offline because they're performing. It's that performative day-to-day engagement that they have online. And then finally, there's the addictive patterns. They maybe want to stop, but they can't. And that loss of control is probably one of the biggest red flags.
And my last question for you, all of this information is so important. You know, we're seeing this increased accountability for tech companies, but there's still, of course, a responsibility that falls on individuals when we're talking about kids' parents. How can we help protect our children from mental health issues with social media, and where does that responsibility fall on folks who are using these platforms regularly?
Yeah, you know, even with the accountability at the top, we still need the boundaries at the bottom. We still have to govern ourselves, and you have to manage your mind just like you would manage your diet and how you eat. Just because it's available doesn't mean it's healthy and unlimited amounts of consumption. So we really have to take the time for our children and for ourselves to curate what we consume, or it ultimately shapes how we think, how we feel, and what we do.
Dr. Jada Jackson, thank you for joining us. This topic is so important. I know this is the news of the day, but this is something that is always important, especially as we're raising kids and teens. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Rulings in lawsuits against big tech are happening across the country, targeting companies like Meta over the impact and influence of social media. A case tied to the Tops mass shooting in Buffalo is part of that growing movement. Our Angelica Gallagher joins us now with the details. Angelica?
Marley, the lawsuit filed on behalf of the families of the victims and the survivors of the Tops mass shooting by the law offices of John V. Elmore PC is going after big tech, and I spoke with the law firm today about what's next.
In 2023, our office filed the first lawsuit of its kind in the country, which is a lawsuit to hold social media companies responsible for their role in contributing to a mass shooting.
Attorney and partner Kristen Elmore Garcia says a settlement has already been reached on behalf of the victims' families and survivors involving the gun manufacturer, dealer, and the shooter's parents. The gunman targeted Tops on Jefferson in Buffalo, killing 10 black people and injuring 3 others.
Big tech caused an addiction harm, and the shooter admitted as so much as himself in state court when he took his guilty plea and said that social media was a big impact. Spent his pandemic years becoming increasingly isolated and increasingly addicted to the social media platforms, really becoming exposed to these white supremacist great replacement theory ideologies.
Experts say while social media can be valuable, it can also be dangerous.
You have young people, in this platform that's built to be addictive for them, just getting material that's, sort of edged out towards the extremes. And when they begin to think that that's what's normal, this is the way that other people think, this is the way that everyone thinks, this is the way that other people behave, this is the way that everyone behaves, and now I'm going to do it too. And that progression is really concerning.
Attorney Elmore Garcia says their lawsuit was rejected by judges in Rochester last year, but their work is far from over. Similar lawsuits in California and New Mexico have found big tech accountable for its influence on thoughts and behaviors that led to indisputable harm. Elmore Garcia says the attorneys responsible for the verdict out of California are serving as co-counsel in the Buffalo-based lawsuit.
Well, right now, we are appealing to New York State Court of Appeals. Hopefully, when we do get to the New York State Court of Appeals, our judges will say that citizens here in New York are afforded the same consumer protection that people in California are. It's telling that 2 of the defendants, which would have been Snapchat and TikTok, settled out of the suit before it made its way to trial. It's only Meta and Alphabet, parent company to YouTube, that remained at the trial.
Elmore Garcia says she hopes this lawsuit creates permanent change.
1, bring justice for these citizens, our neighbors, grandmothers, grandfathers, brothers, husbands, friends who unfortunately died right here in our home community. But to also be a catalyst for change, to make the internet a safer place that will therefore make the world a safer place and prevent another mass shooting like this from ever happening ever again.
Angelica Gallagher, News 4.
Now, here's the deal. with all of these landmark court decisions and judgments against Google, you see what I mean? How long do you think they're going to be able to keep their head or their ship above water? Okay, it won't be long, not at all, because this last case we just seen with the situation that took place in Tops grocery stores in Buffalo, New York, where you had the lawyer that was filing these, claims against Google. You see what I'm saying? I think in Meta as well. She does have a point, because she's looking at it like this. Look, if Google can be made to pay for addicting children, you see what I'm saying, to social media and what have you, what about these lives that were lost? You know what I'm saying? Because you, in other words, Google, Meta, or whoever, failed to put a stop to the radicalization of white wannabe supremacists. You see what I'm saying? That's basically breeding on social media to go out and do and commit heinous crimes, on so-called black people. All right? Of course, it should be addressed. They should have to pay as well. What I'm saying is here, to all content creators, whether you are doing well on YouTube or you're not, when your video viewer rate starts to drop, your watch time hours and all of that kind of stuff, don't take it personal. It's just that they cannot afford, Google cannot afford to continue to pay out money to you guys, you know what I mean? Because all of their money is tied up into litigation, fighting these landmark court decisions. You see, these rulings. You see what I'm saying? And they simply don't have the money. They can sit up there all they want and say, we don't admit to any wrongdoing and we will appeal. But in the meantime, appeals cost money as well. You gonna pay. You're gonna pay one way or the other. Hey, here's the thing too. I fought poor leadership for the downfall of YouTube. YouTube is a beautiful platform, okay? Why they got in bed with Google, I will never understand. I think it took place somewhere around 2016, 2015. I'm not really sure. But they were doing so well. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people was thriving on YouTube. But this is coming to an end now. You see, like I said, this is the reason why they continue to move the goalposts. You know what I'm saying? With watch time hours and now they gonna double that now. You see what I'm saying? You double the watch time hours and your view rate gonna drop anyway. They gonna continue to tell you, well, we're gonna have to take your channel down because of this. Probably because you coughed in a video or something. There's gonna be some lame excuse as to why these things are happening. But behind the scenes, it's just that they going underwater. And they just don't want to tell you that. That's just basically what it all boils down to. And that's in my opinion, okay? That's all I got on this one, people. I would tell you to comment to let me know what you think about this video, but you probably won't be able to because comments rarely, seldom, I don't even get comments as much as I used to. And it's because you can't afford for comments to really go up all that well like that. That's basically what it boils down to. But if you can, try to hit the like button. I'm not sure how long that's going to be around either. And subscribe. People, please remember to live your life as though we're being watched. Simply because we are. This is James, and I'm out. Peace.